Downtown Lafayette, Louisiana. Oh, now can they hear me now?
They weren't even hearing you.
Live from the AOC studios, deep in the heart of downtown Lafayette, Louisiana. Third time's the charm there. It's fun. It's excitement. It's a brand new night here on the Acadiana Open Channel, and somebody left me a present under the light. I appreciate it. Thank y'all. Unfortunately, tonight, though, is not the Hangover Special. For those of you who watch 124 East Main, and for those of you who are familiar with what we do here on the show, can the prompter camera zoom in a little because the boom mic stands in the way? Let's see.
It's just going to be kind of a tight.
For those of you who are watching right now, by the way, this is 124 East Main. Do not adjust your cameras. I'm going to go ahead and go to camera 3. You see Jake right there in the darkness adjusting the camera. This is what happens after Jake and Paul. We really take them off the wall and they start helping us out with the show. So they adjusted the camera and they're still. But you know what? This is kind of cool. And as Boozy walks in the shot, for those of you who are looking, we're going to get out of the way and take a look at the meta monitor. You may notice that we've got a boom stand, we've got a camera in the way. This is so avant-garde that even I'm trying to think of an avant-garde director's name. I'm trying to think of who might it be, but it's not coming to me right now. But at any rate, we're here. We're on the air. It's a brand new night here on AOC for 124 East Main. I'm Ian Ozan. Happy that you are here with us this evening. For those of you who are not familiar with the show, for those of you who've never seen us before, we've been here on AOC now for a little more than 8 years. We talk about anything and everything. Normally, our first show after the 4th of July would be the Hangover Special. Tyler, Artemio, and a bunch of others would join me in here, and we'd just shoot the breeze. They're not here, obviously. And tonight, we have to go a little bit more serious than what I was hoping. That other camera still needs to zoom in just a tad bit more. Yeah, or pan, let's see, tilt up. Tilt up. Now pan left, other left, pan right. There you go, right. Back a little more the other way. Back a little more. Other way. Right there, hold on, let's see. See, that works. Down a little bit. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm my own director too. That shot should work. Let's see. Zoom out a tad. Zoom out. Okay, now pan. Other way. Pan. Keep panning. Keep going. A little more. Big butts, no whammy. And stop right there. That's perfect. If we take this graphic down, you can see the owl right here. So we are definitely perfect. But this is 124 East Main. Again, Ian Ozan here with you. Thank you for spending part of your Sunday night with us here on the Acadiana Open Channel. Now that we've gotten all of our camera shots and graphics out of the way, again, for those of you who've never seen the show before, if you've not been with us in our previous locations, if you've not been with us on Saturdays or on Mondays or on Tuesdays, again, we are a show about anything and everything. We welcome your calls at 366-8951. Hey, the phone. Y'all got it? Y'all hijacked my phone.
Yeah, you don't get no phone, Ian.
I don't get. What do you mean?
No phone for you.
No phone for me. What are you, the phone Nazi?
Yeah, that's right.
I think Nazism is a perfectly understandable ideological stance.
Really? You're gonna... Boy,
I'm gonna ruin your show.
Yeah, you are gonna ruin my show. Jeez,
I just
Louise.
showed my back to the camera.
It's not the first time you've done that. At least you had clothes on this time. Say what?
It's okay.
Everything's good? All right, we're making sure. But again, thank you for being with us tonight. And tonight, we're going to be a little bit more sober and a little bit more somber than what we normally might be on the show. For those of you who've not been living under a rock for the better part of the last week, you've seen the violence and the incidences that have happened in Baton Rouge, that have happened in Minneapolis, that have happened in Dallas. And of course, when incidents like this happen in this day and age, people are quick to take to social media and are quick to voice their opinions. Tonight we're going to try to sort through all of that. Tonight we're going to try to make sense of everything that has happened. We're going to try to do so in a rational way and in a thought-out process. If you'd like to discuss these issues, feel free to call in. Again, the phone number is on the screen, 366-8951. That's in the fashionable 337 area code. You can also tweet us. You can Facebook us, though my phone's in the back. If you do, we may miss it. Or if you have the phone number, you can text as well. But the one thing we don't want tonight, or I should say the things we don't want tonight, there are more than one thing we don't want, but the things we don't want tonight are ad hominem attacks. We don't want, nor do we want to ignore the elephants in the room. And that's where we're going to start this discussion. We would be foolish as a people to ignore the fact that race plays in the incidents that happened this past week. I'm not saying that, I'm not accusing anyone of racism, but we have to acknowledge the fact that if the men who were shot were white, or of the majority, shall we say, maybe the officers would have acted with more patience towards them. Maybe if these gentlemen were not black, maybe they'd still be living. Maybe they'd still be with us. And people are quick to say that politicians and others have tried to racialize and politicize the shootings this week. And at this point, I'm just talking about the Sterling shooting and the Minnesota shooting. I'm not talking about Dallas. We're going to get to that later. But the fact of the matter is that here in the United States, we have royally screwed up over the last 50 to 60 years in trying to figure out race relations in this country. In 1964, 1965, this country went a long ways and made great strides with the Civil Rights Act, with the Voting Rights Act, and over the years, more strides have been made. But somewhere along the way, it seems that we as a country have forgotten, or let me not say forgotten, we thought that everything had been fixed, that we didn't need to do anything more. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And I think for my generation, for those who were born after the Civil Rights movement, for those who were born in an era where equality seemed that, or where it seemed that equality was the reality, was the norm, I think there are a lot of us between who are 30 and younger who don't see it, who don't recognize that there still is a racial problem in the United States. If you go on Facebook, you go on Twitter, of course you'll see the hashtag Black Lives Matter. But you'll also see some people post the hashtag All Lives Matter, which there's no disputing that. All lives do matter. Yes, everybody's a human. Every human life is important, regardless of who it is. But by using the All Lives Matter hashtag, I think people are missing the point and maybe aren't taking the message of Black Lives Matter seriously. There wouldn't be a need for that hashtag if racial profiling didn't exist, if discrimination in our country didn't exist. And people, especially my age, may say, well, it doesn't. You have equal opportunity. You have affirmative action programs. Students of all races, colors, and creeds go to school together, ride the bus together, drink from the same water fountains, go to the same bathrooms. The hallmarks of 1960s, or I should say Jim Crow segregation, are no longer with us. But there are other ways in which discrimination in this country still persists. Whether it's through wages or, as the president pointed out, in the incarceration rate, in graduation rates in this country. The world's a hard place if you're a brother. But yet there are people, especially of my age, who don't see it, who don't recognize it. They'll be quick to say, oh, I have black friends, I've got this, I'm not a racist. I don't see it. But again, as Newt Gingrich of all people pointed out, maybe you have to walk a mile in a black man's shoes to understand. And I was one of the people who didn't see it or didn't understand a need for Black Lives Matter, or for that matter, for any reason to continue pushing for equal rights or for fair treatment of the black community until I was in college. For those of you who know or who don't know, I went to Princeton University. One of my good friends, still a good friend of mine, Reggie Galloway, he's now working in Washington, D.C. I forget which government agency he works for nowadays. But Reggie was a year younger than I. We were sports broadcasters together at WPRB. And one night we happened to run into each other on the street. I was coming from dinner. I forget where he was coming from. He might have been coming from dinner himself at a different location. But we ran into each other on Nassau Street, the main drag of Princeton. We stopped, shook hands, hugged, talked for a few minutes, and then went on our way. As Reggie was walking away, and after he had gotten a fair distance down the road, an officer who had been parked maybe a couple hundred feet away shouts out to me, "Hey, suit!" I was wearing a suit that night. Calls me over to his car. "Sir, can I help you?" And he proceeds to ask me, and mind you, this is a uniformed police officer in a marked unit, asking me, at the time 19 or 20 years old, this question: what did that black man want with you? A police officer asking, what did that black man want with you? My first instinct was to go all indignant on this guy, to cop an attitude with him, pardon the pun. But I didn't do that. I explained to him who he was and why we knew each other and how we knew each other, and that it was a conversation. I should have gotten that officer's badge and his name and then asked Princeton police what the hell was going on. The fact that someone would pull me over and ask me what a man who was a couple shades darker than I wanted with me made me realize that there's still problems in the United States when it comes to race, when it comes to how people of color are perceived, that just by being a darker shade than the majority of the United States, that they still have the proverbial mark on their back, that they're looked at differently, that people from all walks of life, whether it's police, whether it's the average Joe, whether it's a store owner, look at them differently. And that's a hard pill to swallow, coming from a family of mixed background like I do. Maybe I should have recognized that this country had problems when I was 5 or 6 years old in kindergarten. And one of my classmates, and someone who's still a dear friend of mine, comes up to me and says, "Ian, are you black?" My mama said, "You're black. Are you?" I look now at my arm and say, I don't look it. It wasn't until many years later that I understood the importance of that question and understood why I should have been angry at that question back in 1993 and 1994 as a 5 or a 6 year old. growing up in my family with aunts and uncles and cousins who could define the Skittles logo of tasting the rainbow, I never thought anything of having a cousin who was about 3 or 4 shades darker than I, or an uncle who would be considered black by most definitions. Because that's how I grew up. I grew up in a family with different skin tones, and later learned that I had mixed ancestry. Something as a 5 or 6-year-old you shouldn't be thinking about. You see your family, you see your relatives, and, hey, Uncle Joe. Hey, Cousin Kelly. Hey, Aunt Molly. Aunt Alma. Aunt Marva. Uncle Chris. You see these people, and they're your family. They're your blood. They're your flesh and blood. You don't see them as someone who is a different skin tone than you. And it wasn't until later that I learned how harsh this world is, and that unfortunately people don't see the world that way. That we, in the big picture, we should be viewing everybody else in this world the way that we view our families, the way I viewed my family. Is that we are all one. We are all one being, and that we deserve to be here, and that regardless of what we look like, we all have a right to be here. To quote the Desiderata, we are children of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. We have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to us, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. We have that right to be here. We are children of the universe, of whatever being is up there, if there is one up there. But it took a moment in college to wake me up, to make me realize that there are still problems in this world. And then the incidences that we saw this week heightened that even more. And I think part of the problem with our race problem here in the United States, part of what's causing it is how children are taught. How parents teach their children how to deal with it. I know every time a child or 2 children who look differently from each other, if you get my drift, appear on camera talking or hugging, or anytime you see a picture of 2 kids getting along together, news reporters and people who consume the news are quick to say, there's hope for the next generation. This is proof that we're getting better. No, it's not. Children come out of the womb designed to love. They know no hate. They do not know racism. They don't know skin tone. All they see is another person. They have an innate characteristic to want to get to know that other child, that other person. We as a society have failed our children continuously in 2 ways. One, the parents who teach their children how to hate. Parents who teach their kids outright racism from the time that they can speak, from the time that they can listen, have doomed this country. And in some cases, it's not outright. In some cases, parents may think they're not teaching their children racism, but in subtle ways, it can be done. After all, the easiest way to see what a child has learned is to get a glimpse of him or listen to him or her as he or she gets older. Because many of the opinions he or she was taught as a child will come out, especially as a youngster. But the other way that we failed the children is that we've, again, in the last 30 years or so, we've taught them that being colorblind or the seeing the world in a colorblind manner is a way to live. And that is not necessarily a bad idea, but the problem is until everyone begins seeing the world in a colorblind manner, we're still going to be repeating this vicious circle. To ignore the fact that racism exists isn't going to help the problem. Pretending that the United States is a colorblind nation is not going to help the problem. We as a country have to be secure enough in ourselves and have to get over our fear of pissing other people off and start discussing the matters at hand. Where are we now and where do we have to go? Quite frankly, I don't think we're much more advanced than what we were in 1964 and 65. It's been 50 years plus since the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act was passed. And where are we now? States are now putting in laws to restrict people who can vote. In some cases based on party affiliation, because of course, if you're black or a female or minority, you're more than likely going to vote Democrat. Race is at the heart of our politics, and we still don't have the testicular fortitude to confront it. If anything, this week, the shootings in Baton Rouge and Minnesota and the immediate aftermath have proven that we still have a race problem in this country, that we need to tackle it. To give credit where credit's due, Sterling's son's mother and her attorneys have called for peace, have called for allowing the justice system to play this through. The Baton Rouge case is muddy, to say the least. With the 2 camera angles of the shooting that were released, you really don't know what happened until the surveillance video from the convenience store surfaces. We'll never truly know what happened last Tuesday night. In my heart of hearts, I hope that the officers acted justly. Again, the justice system will play itself out, and we'll find out eventually what happened. The Minnesota case appears, and again I say appears, to be a case of cold-hearted, calculated murder. When the Democratic governor of a state comes out and says, yeah, this doesn't look good, you got a problem. Minnesota's governor, at this point, or I should say on Friday, coming out and almost convicting the police officer in that incident with his statements. But that leads us to our next part. No matter what happened this past week, regardless of anything that happened, we still have to be calm and have to wait for justice to play out. Blindly blaming police for all of society's issues does nobody any good. Bashing police doesn't do any good. Again, they're bigger. There are other solutions and bigger solutions that need to be found to fix the problem. And I know in Baton Rouge, the first thing the protesters demanded were the resignations of Mayor Kip Holden and Police Chief Carl Dabadie. For what? Why? Holden didn't have anything to do with it. Dabney didn't have anything to do with it. The man's been in office for all of 4 months, on an interim basis, no less. But I digress. The sniper attacks in Dallas, I think, finally, for as sick and as tragic as that incident was, I think, finally put into perspective for many Americans, regardless of what they think of the Minnesota and Baton Rouge incidents. The Dallas sniper attack made people realize that police officers are people too. They're out there doing a job. They're out there like me, you, and everyone else, going out, working an 8-hour shift to earn money for their families, to earn money to support themselves. And in the process, do the jobs that neither you nor I want to do. Running into buildings looking for gunmen who are trying to take them out. Trying to rescue people who are in harm's way. Yes, I know we've all had our run-ins with police, whether it's a traffic stop, whether it's a perceived attitude that a police officer may have taken when speaking with you, whatever the case is. Look, we all have our good days. Police officers have their good days. We all have our bad days. So do police officers. But the fact of the matter remains that these people, again, as we talked about earlier, are humans too. They deserve every benefit of the doubt. They deserve our appreciation for the very least protecting, at least attempting to protect and service. It's one thing to be pissed off at a couple of individual officers for their actions, or to be outraged when a rogue police officer is discovered committing a crime. And even police officers themselves will admit there are bad apples in the bunch. There are some police officers, some law enforcement officers, who don't deserve to be wearing the badge, who don't take their oaths seriously. Or, matter of fact, they take their oath and ignore it immediately afterward and do things their way. But we should not, I repeat, we should not allow those few rogue officers, those few bad apples in the crop of law enforcement officers in this country taint our view of law enforcement as a whole. The fact of the matter is, if we didn't have law enforcement, our society would be up a creek without a paddle. Sort of like a baseball game without an umpire, a basketball game without referees. You can't play the game if you don't have anyone to enforce the rules. You can't have a society if you don't have anyone enforce the laws. We can have an argument about certain laws and whether they're just another day. Matter of fact, we do that pretty often here on this program. But to sit here and say that all police are evil because of the acts of a few rogue officers, a few people who don't take their jobs and their oaths seriously, who don't respect the badge, is ludicrous. Because I guarantee you there are far more good officers who respect the badge and their position than those who don't. Next time you see a law enforcement officer, thank him or her. Because again, Lord knows I wouldn't want that job, nor would you. It takes a brave person to even think about going into that line of work, because you never know if you're going to go home that day. You never know if something will happen in the line of duty that could hurt you, that could paralyze you, that could end your life. last year in the aftermath of the Grand shooting, nobody was worried about an officer's track record. Nobody was worried about what they had done in the past. All they were worried about is making sure that everyone in the Grand got out safe and securing that scene and making sure that everything got handled appropriately. And you know what? They did. "99% of the time, that's how police officers operate. Get the job done, get it done well, get it done efficiently, and eliminate any threats to the people they serve." Whether the officers in the Baton Rouge or Minnesota cases felt threatened, I don't know. All I know is what I've seen in the videos. Baton Rouge, the jury's out. Minnesota, that guy looked like he was trigger happy. But again, I don't know. We'll find out soon enough. But at the end of the day, we have to think about after this past week, we've got to think about where we as a country are headed. We have to begin a firm discussion about race relations in this country. We have to begin, more so on the community level, a discussion between everyone in our community, not just the black community, but everyone in our communities, especially here in Lafayette, a discussion about how police can serve the community. How can they better police the community? How can we as a community help them keep our streets safe? Because the fact of the matter is, we can talk about police brutality. We can talk about all of these incidences of officer-involved shootings. But the fact of the matter is, we still have violence going on in our streets. Shooting Wednesday night at the Martin Luther King Center on Cora Street proved that. We've got much bigger fish to fry here in our community. In Lafayette, in Baton Rouge, and elsewhere. We need to figure out how to keep our young boys and girls, our brothers and sisters, from shooting each other, from killing each other, from snuffing out other young lives and denying their peers opportunities to live life to the fullest. A 22-year-old man shot and killed in retaliation for a crime that he may have committed. The kid apparently paid his debt to society. He had been in jail and was out. But yet another gang took it upon themselves to go and snuff him out too. It's one thing if our local organizations, our local community organizations, want to talk about mending the gap or building a bridge between the community and the police department. That's fine and dandy. But you know what? We here in Lafayette need to fix our problems ourselves, or I should say, need to fix the problems on our streets ourselves. Because the fact of the matter is, when a kid gets shot, or a kid gets beat up, or somebody gets robbed at gunpoint, it's too late. At that point, we're reacting to the problem. We need to be proactive here in Lafayette and find a way to get our children, to get our young people, to find them a place and a better way, and show them that crime and gangs and violence aren't the answer to their problems. It may look cool in a music video, it may look cool in a movie, but damn, go going out and killing somebody else ain't going to do anybody any good, including them. We sit here in Lafayette, we sit here wherever you may be watching this right now, and we go on Facebook and we bitch and moan about, oh, Obama's done this, oh, Congress has done that, oh, the governor this, that. You know what? We might have problems in Washington. We may have problems in the state capitol. We may have problems at the police department, at City Hall, this, that, and the other. But you know what? Griping on Facebook isn't going to do anything about it. You know how you want to fix society? You know how you want to fix problems? By taking action on the streets. By getting our young people back in school. By encouraging our young people to get educations. To encourage them to fulfill their dreams, to follow whatever dreams they may have, and more importantly, to teach them that there's more to life, or or there are other things to aspire to be other than a rap star or rock star and a star athlete or this, that, and the other. Because quite frankly, not many people make it. Is gun control the answer? I don't know. Are there certain weapons that shouldn't be on the street? Absolutely. Certain military style weapons, your AKs, and so on. We don't need them, but that's a whole different argument for another day. But the fact of the matter is, that's not, at least here in Lafayette, not what we have to worry about. Those of you who want to fix the world's problems, you know how you start? By teaching your children to love instead of hate. By teaching your children to study, to go to school, and to seek their career ambitions. We are one of the most poorly educated states here in the United States. Our legislature's not helping that, but that's neither here nor there. Just think if we had a better educated populace, how much better off this state would be. Why can't we start that better education now, or better educating our people now? We, as a community, as a people, as a group, have to do better in preparing our young children for the world in which they're going to live, for the world that one day they are going to run. I remember as a child, in kindergarten when people would ask, or when a teacher would ask, what do you be when you want to grow up? You had your firemen, you had your policemen. But you also had people who wanted to be doctors, who wanted to be lawyers. People who wanted to be astronauts. You don't hear kids saying they want to be astronauts anymore. It's not fashionable now. Nowadays, you'll still get a smattering of those answers. But it seems as if the youth today want to get rich quick. Nah, it doesn't work like that, kid. Nowadays, it seems like that drive, that ambition that people my age had way back when no longer lives. I hope that we can find that again somewhere, somehow, and impart that ambition on our younger generation. (366-8951) is the phone number. Again, for those of you who do want to get in. Going back to fixing the community. Those of you who like to take to Facebook and complain, and those of you who like to hide behind Facebook avatars and names and spout your views and call people names and lash out, what's the point? What's the point? Facebook was an absolute cesspool during the middle of the week up to Friday. I haven't looked at Facebook in the last 2 days because of how absolutely absurd some of the comments had become. Of course, you had the standard Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter arguments. You had a few outright racists popping their heads in. You had the Facebook lawyers, the Facebook politicians, and others speaking of issues of which they knew about. Going back to that education part, please, people, do some research before you comment on anything on Facebook. It would help you. But for Christ's sakes, people, can we not have a normal dialogue anymore without calling anybody names? Have we de-evolved rather, I should say, have we de-evolved so much as a human society that we don't know how to communicate, how to speak with each other without calling each other names, without attacking the person as opposed to attacking the argument? Have we gotten to a point in our society where people can't agree to disagree anymore? Where friendships are lost over Facebook arguments and Facebook posts? Are we that shallow of a society that someone who dares not disagree or dares not to agree with us has to be cut out of our circle? I've seen a lot of that over the course of the last week, and quite frankly, it makes me even more scared for our society and the direction we're heading. But something else I noticed on Facebook this week is a lot of media bashing. A lot of complaining about the media for showing the video of the Baton Rouge shootings, both videos of the Baton Rouge shootings. People complain, why you want to show that? Kids are watching. It's violent. It's this, it's that. You've got people who are complaining about, why I'll even run in this story. He was a convicted felon, referring to Albert Sterling. He was a convicted felon. He deserved it. And yeah, we had people call and say that too. You had people argue, oh, why are you giving time to the president? He's terrible. He's this, he's that. And we've had people use even stronger language against him. We had people asking why we devoted so much time to a story that's in Baton Rouge instead of covering local news. We've had people complain about this, that, and the other when it comes to the news this week. It's been absolutely, if you work in news, this was not a good week for you. And I learned a long time ago, and I've been in the news business for almost 6 years now, so I know you're not going to please everyone all the time. I know that we're not going to, that not everybody's going to be happy with the coverage that we do all the time. I get that. But the fact of the matter is, we in the media have a responsibility to show you what's going on, regardless of if it's good news or bad news. That was the other argument that we got I'm paraphrasing here, but we got two notes like this on Thursday, or was it Wednesday? That said, again, paraphrasing here, I can't stand to watch your news anymore. I'm switching to the competition because all you do is show is hate, 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 hate. All you do is show evil in the world. All you do is show bad news. And you know what? That's why we exist as a news media. We are not here. The news media does not exist to cover bake sales, to cover 100th birthdays, to cover band recitals. And you know, sometimes we do that because there are some feel-good stories that deserve to be covered. But you know what? The Fourth Estate exists to expose the corruption in the world, to expose the evil that's in the world, and to make you feel uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable after watching a newscast, then that means we expose something that you feel is not right with the world. We've exposed something that maybe you, I, and everyone else watching might have to work towards fixing or work towards changing. The news, and quite frankly, the entire world, is not all rainbows and unicorns. The news sometimes is depressing, and this week it was sure as hell depressing. But contrary to popular belief, we in the news media do not go around peddling hate. We don't go around peddling violence. We don't go around wanting to cover all of this negativity. The fact of the matter is, this negativity exists and we've got to show it. The human existence is not a long episode of Barney where everybody's kumbaya, I love you, you love me, and hugging a purple dinosaur. The world is evil. There's some good in it. But there's still a lot of evil in this world and we've got to navigate it. And if you know that it exists, if we can show to you that it exists and where it exists, it might help you navigate this world a little bit better. For those who took the time to write us and say that we're peddling hate or we're peddling racism or that we ourselves are outright racist, what the hell are you looking at? No, we're not racist. We're the umpires in a world full of players. We call balls and strikes fair and foul, and that's what we do. The fact of the matter is, if you want to look at the racism in this, if you want to look at people who promote racism, you want to find people who promote hate, who promote racism, log on to Facebook. The people that you see in the real world on a day-to-day basis, the people who will smile in your face and shake your hands, will be the same ones who go on Facebook and post a comment about how this invective here deserved to get shot. About how maybe police should do this more. And yes, there were people who were commenting with that line this past week that he deserved it, that more of them deserve it. You know what? You want to find someone who incites hate and racism? Look on Facebook. Go on Twitter. Go online. There's a lot of that. Hell, look at Fox News. There's some of that there too. But the fact of the matter is, we in the media, those of us who work in the media, who work to report the facts and work to report the news, that's not our job. We don't do it. We bring you the story. To bum off Fox News, we report and you decide. That's exactly what we do. And the fact of the matter is, there are a good bunch of people, a vocal minority of people, who decide to take to the internet and take to Facebook and take our stories and comment on them. And with their comments, further divide our community through hate, through racism, through greed. It's not our fault in the media that there's some real ignoramuses in this world. But if we can shine a light on them and bring them out of the woodwork and make you recognize who they are, then we've done our job. Would we rather live in a world free of hate, live in a world free of violence? Absolutely. Remember that world of rainbows and unicorns I talked about earlier? I would love if that's all we report on. I would love if we had no shootings. I would love if we had no murders, if we had no fatal car crashes. I would love if we had no government corruption. I would love it if we didn't have to report legislative audit reports showing that someone stole money from a utility system. I would love it if none of that existed. I would be happy if I could live in a world in which, as a news person, all I reported was good news. Unfortunately, that's not the world in which we live. Caller, good evening. Welcome to 124 East Main. Hello?
Yes, man. I thought, how you doing? Where in the world have you been?
Say again?
Where in the world have you been?
Where in the world have I been? Lately on Tuesday nights. We just moved back to Sundays.
Well, I thought I was going crazy because I agree with you wholeheartedly on the subject of the news media.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You guys are getting blamed for what's happening in the world. This would be a terrible country if nobody saw what was going on.
I agree with you, and that's the thing. People are quick to claim, say, "Why do you have to cover this?" And I was reading earlier because I had the chance reading the book "Deliver Us from Evil" by Jason Berry. It's about the pre-sex abuse scandal here in the Diocese of Lafayette. And in 1985, there were businesses who boycotted the Times of Acadiana for daring to break the story. But imagine if they didn't cover the story. Where would we be now? Gilbert Goche would still be out there.
If mind control was that easy, you wouldn't have had the sexual scandal in the Catholic Church.
That's exactly. We are here. The news media is there to shine a light on the problems in the world, not to make you feel good. If you want to feel good, change the channel and go watch a sitcom.
Thank you. And I just wanted to tell you, man, keep up the good work, man. Until you don't hear too much of that, and you haven't been in it lately, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate those kind words, and we'll be back here next Sunday night. So I hope you tune in and hope to hear from you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And that's all I wish people would realize is that, again, we have a job to do. The news media has a job to do, just as policemen and policewomen have a job to do. Some do it better than others, but at the end of the day, we all have families to support, we all have bills to pay, and we've got a job to do. Complaining on Facebook and on social media isn't going to help the matter, and it's not going to change anything. If you really want to affect change in society, go vote. If you want to affect change in society, run for office. If you want to affect change in society, file a lawsuit if you think you've been wronged. If you want to affect change in society, run for office yourself. Did I say that one? Sitting behind a computer isn't going to do anything. To quote Michael Jackson, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make a change. Start talking to that man in the mirror if you want to affect change in this world. Unfortunately, there are not enough people who want to do that. And when I say affect change, doing it in a peaceful manner. You want to affect change in this world? You want to affect change more locally? Start working with the youth in our inner city here in Lafayette and remind them that violence isn't the way to live, that they need an education, and that they need to be better people. That as youth, that they have a responsibility to continue carrying on the legacy, not only of their families, but also of the people that helped get them where they are. Whether it's teachers, whether it's mentors, or whoever. They have a legacy to carry. And joining a gang does not help in that legacy. That's it for us. God willing, if the checks don't bounce, we'll see you back here next Sunday night. We're here every Sunday at 6 o'clock here on the Acadiana Open channel. Stay tuned. John Best and Voices of African Americans coming on tonight?
Not tonight. Next week. There may be a replay.
Okay. Who's on after us here on AOC? Is there anybody else tonight?
Nothing live. I'm sure there's a premiere, though.
Okay. So stay tuned. More great programming here on AOC. Nothing live tonight. But God willing, if the checks don't bounce, I'll see you back here next Sunday night, 6 o'clock. I'll be here. I trust he'll be here as well. I want to thank the caller for checking in, and we hope to hear from him as well as the rest of you next week. Until next week, I'm Ian Ozan reminding you, don't take life too seriously. You're not getting out alive anyway. Good night, everybody.